There's a different kind of pain. The kind that doesn't come from strangers. The kind that comes from people who are supposed to choose you, but don't. That was the day Elena learned something she would never forget. Family can be the place you belong, or the place that erases you. If you saw Elena back then, you wouldn't think she was the type to be thrown out of her own home. She was quiet. Not weak. Just quiet. The kind of person who listened more than she spoke. The kind who remembered birthdays, helped without being asked, and stayed loyal even when it wasn't returned. He believed in family. Not in the perfect way, but in the real way. The kind where people argue, disagree, make mistakes, but still stand together. At least that's what she thought. The Brooks family was respected. Not rich, but comfortable. Her father owned a mid-sized real estate company. Her mother managed the home like everything had to look perfect from the outside. And then there was her younger sister, Lydia. Lydia was everything Elena wasn't. Loud. Confident. Charming. The kind of person people noticed the moment she walked into a room. The kind of person who knew exactly how to turn attention into advantage. And most importantly, she knew how to make people believe her. Growing up, Elena never competed with Lydia. She didn't need to. She believed there was space for both of them. But as the years passed, she started noticing something. Whenever something went wrong, it somehow became her fault. A broken vase. Elena, you should have been watching her. A missed payment. Elena, didn't you say you'd remind us? A misunderstanding. Elena, why didn't you speak up earlier? At first she brushed it off. Because that's what quiet people do. They carry things. They adjust. They convince themselves it's not worth the fight. But some patterns aren't accidents. They're setups. The day everything changed started like any other. Calm. Ordinary. Deceptively normal. Elena had just returned from work when she noticed the tension immediately. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind that waits. Her father was in the living room. Her mother beside him. Lydia standing near the table. Arms crossed. Eyes already filled with something that looked like victory. Elena, her father said. Not warmly. Not neutrally. Told. Sit down. Her chest tightened. What's going on? Lydia didn't wait. She's asking like she doesn't know, she said, shaking her head. Elena frowned. Know what? Her mother slid a folder across the table. Explain this. Elena picked it up. Slowly. Carefully. Her eyes moved across the pages. Then stopped. Then went back. Her heartbeat started rising. Fast. Unsteady. What is this? She asked. Lydia let out a sharp laugh. Don't play dumb. Elena looked at her. Confused. No, seriously, what is this? Her father's voice cut in. Unauthorized transfers. Missing funds. Transactions from the family account. Elena's mind went blank. That doesn't make sense, she said quickly. I didn't. Then how is your name on every document? Lydia snapped. Elena froze. What? Lydia stepped forward, pointing. Your signature. Your login. Your approval. Elena's hands started shaking. That's not possible, she said. I didn't touch any of this. But even as she spoke, he saw it. Her name. Her digital authorization. Everything. Someone had made it look like her. Perfectly. She looked up. Straight at Lydia. And in that moment, everything clicked. You did this, Elena said quietly. Lydia's expression didn't change. But her eyes gave her away. Just for a second. Wow, Lydia said slowly. Now you're accusing me? That's low even for you. I didn't do this, Elena said louder now. And you know it. Her father slammed his hand on the table. Enough. The room went silent. I will not have you stand here and blame your sister when you've clearly done something wrong. Elena felt it. That moment. The shift. This wasn't an investigation. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't doubt. It was judgment. You don't believe me? She asked. No one answered. Her mother looked away. Her father avoided her eyes. Lydia stood still. Calm. Untouched. And just like that, Elena understood. It didn't matter what she said. The decision had already been made. Her father stood. You've embarrassed this family enough. Her throat tightened. I didn't take that money. Then why is everything pointing to you? Her father pointed toward the door. Pack your things. The words hit harder than anything else. Leave. Please, her mother whispered. But there was no protection in her voice. Only distance. Elena looked around the room. At the people she had trusted her entire life. At the sister who had just destroyed her. At the parents who chose the easier lie. Then she nodded. Not because she agreed, but because she was done explaining. She walked to her room, packed a small suitcase, and left the house without looking back. No one stopped her. That was the part that stayed with her. Not the accusation. Not the betrayal. The silence. The way it was so easy for them to let her go. That night, Elena sat on a bus going nowhere, watching the city lights blur past the window. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Because something inside her had changed. Not broken. Focused. They chose her, she whispered. Then she looked out the window again. Fine. Her voice was quiet. Come. Final. I'll choose myself. And that was the beginning of everything. That night on the bus, Elena didn't know where she was going. She only knew one thing. She was never going back. Not to that house. Not to that version of herself. Not to a place where her truth didn't matter. She held her suitcase close, staring out the window as the city lights passed by in silence. Every street she left behind felt like a piece of her old life being erased. But strangely, she didn't feel lost. She felt clear. For the first time in her life, there was no one to blame her. No one to compare her. No one to decide who she was. Just her. And that was enough. The first few months were hard. Not the kind of hard people talk about for sympathy. The kind of hard that happens quietly. When no one is watching. When you're figuring things out alone. Elena rented a small room in a shared apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't much. A bed. A small table. A window that barely let in light. But it was hers. And that mattered more than comfort. She worked wherever she could. Office assistant jobs. Freelance admin work. Late-night data entry. Anything that paid. Anything that kept her moving. Some nights she barely slept. Some days she barely ate. But she never stopped. Because every time she felt like giving up, she remembered that moment. Standing in that living room. Being accused. Being dismissed. Being erased. And something inside her refused to go back to that. Ever again. But survival wasn't her only goal. Not anymore. Elena had always been observant. Even when she was quiet. She noticed things. Patterns. Behaviors. Mistakes others didn't see. Back at her father's company, she had handled more than anyone realized. Client records. Scheduling. Internal processes. She had seen how things worked. And more importantly, how they failed. So instead of just working, she started learning. Quietly. At night after long shifts she studied. Business systems. Operations management. Client relations. Financial tracking. Not in a classroom. Not with anyone guiding her. Just her laptop. And determination. While the world slept, Elena was building. Months turned into a year. Then something started to change. Slowly at first. Then noticeably. She became faster. Smarter. More precise. Companies began to trust her with more responsibility. Not because she demanded it. Because she delivered results. She didn't talk much in meetings. But when she did, people listened. She didn't compete for attention. But somehow, she became impossible to ignore. Then came the first opportunity that changed everything. A small property management company hired her to fix a recurring issue. They were losing clients. Constantly. No one knew why. Elena didn't rush to answer. She observed. Tracked patterns. Reviewed complaints. Listened to staff. Within 2 weeks, she found the problem. It wasn't pricing. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't even competition. It was consistency. Clients weren't leaving because of one big mistake. They were leaving because of repeated small ones. Delayed responses. Missed details. Unreliable service. Elena redesigned their system. Simplified processes. Improved communication flow. Created accountability. 3 months later, client retention improved. Significantly. The owner was impressed. Not just with the results, but with how Elena worked. Calm. Precise. Quietly effective. He referred her to another company. Then another. Then another. Elena didn't advertise. She didn't chase attention. Her work spoke for her. And just like that, her reputation began to grow. Not loudly, but steadily. Meanwhile, back home, things were starting to fall apart. Her father's company wasn't doing well. At first, no one noticed. From the outside, everything still looked fine. Inside, there were cracks. Clients were leaving. Money was disappearing. Mistakes were increasing. Daniel was still in charge. Without Elena there to quietly fix problems, everything he ignored began to surface. But instead of taking responsibility, he did what he always did. He blamed others. Employees started leaving. Trust started breaking. Slowly, the company that once stood strong started sinking. Elena didn't know all the details yet, but she felt it. Because sometimes, you don't need updates to know something isn't right. 2.5 years after she left, Elena made a decision. She was no longer surviving. She was ready to build something of her own. Not just work for others. Not just fix problems. Create something. She opened her laptop that night, sat quietly, and typed a name. Brooke Strategy Group. She paused for a moment, looking at the name. Not because she missed them, but because she had reclaimed it. The name they tried to bury her under would now rise with her. She registered the business. Started small. Took on clients she could manage alone. Worked longer hours than ever before. But this time, it felt different. She wasn't proving anything to anyone. She was building something for herself. And that changed everything. Within a year, her company grew. Slowly. Then faster. She hired her first employee. Then another. Then a small team. Her systems worked. Her clients stayed. Her reputation strengthened. And without realizing it, Elena had crossed a line. She was no longer the girl who got blamed. She was the woman people depended on. And far away, in a house she once called home, the truth was getting closer. Because lies don't last forever. And when they finally break, everything changes. Elena didn't know it yet. But very soon, the people who threw her out would come looking for her. Not with accusations, but with something they never gave her before. Need. And this time, things would be different. Elena didn't expect the call. Not after everything. Not after the silence that followed her leaving. Not after years of rebuilding a life no one from her past had tried to understand. So when her phone rang that afternoon, and he saw the name, she didn't pick up immediately. Her father. For a moment she just stared at the screen. Memories don't disappear. They wait. And sometimes all it takes is a name to bring everything back. The accusations. The silence. The door closing behind her. She let the phone ring once more. Then she answered. Hello. There was a pause. Long enough to feel unfamiliar. Elena. His voice sounded different. Not strong. Not certain. Tired. We need to talk. Elena leaned back slightly in her chair. Come. What about? Another pause. The company, it's not doing well. Of course it isn't. She didn't say it out loud. I see, she replied. There was hesitation on the other end. Then finally, we need your help. Not, how are you? Not, I'm sorry. Help. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Not in anger. Just in understanding. Nothing had really changed. Only the circumstances had. What kind of help? She asked. Can you come by? He said quickly. It's better we discuss it in person. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said something he didn't expect. No. Silence. I don't come back to places that threw me out, she added calmly. Her father inhaled slowly. I understand, but things are serious. They were serious when I told you I didn't take that money, Elena replied. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. That was the difference now. He had no answer for that. For the first time, he had to sit in it. I was wrong, he said quietly. The words hung in the air. Heavy, late, but real. Elena didn't respond immediately. Because apologies don't erase moments. They only acknowledge them. I can review your situation, she said finally. Professionally. The word mattered. Her father understood. Yes, of course. Send me everything, she continued. Financial records. Contracts. Transactions. I will. And one more thing, she added. Yes. I don't do this for free. Another pause. I understand. Of course he does. Now he does. The call ended. And Elena sat there for a moment. So, not shaken. Not emotional. Just aware. The shift had happened. The files arrived the next day. Everything she asked for. Everything they had hidden. Everything they hadn't even realized was a problem. Elena opened the documents. And within minutes, he saw it. Clear. Obvious. Undeniable. Daniel. It was always Daniel. But this time, it was worse than she expected. Much worse. The missing money wasn't a one-time issue. It was a pattern. Repeated. Hidden. Expanded over years. Fake vendors. Layered transactions. Accounts that didn't match. Numbers that didn't add up. And right in the middle of it all, the moment that changed everything. The transaction that had been pinned on her. The one that got her thrown out. Elena leaned forward slightly. Zoomed in. Checked the timestamps. The authorizations. The origin. And there was. The detail no one had bothered to look for. The detail that proved everything. It wasn't her. It had never been her. The system logs showed access from a different terminal. At a time she wasn't even in the office. And the override authorization didn't match her credentials. Someone had manipulated the records. Carefully, but not perfectly. Elena sat back. Took a slow breath. And for the first time since that night, she felt something settle inside her. Not anger. Not even satisfaction. Just truth. Finally standing where it should have stood from the beginning. 2 days later, she walked into the building. The same building she had once entered every day without being seen. Well, everything felt different. People noticed. Not because she demanded attention. Because her presence carried something it didn't before. Certainty. Control. Power. Her father was waiting in his office. He stood when she entered. As if unsure whether to greet her as a daughter. Or as someone he needed. Elena. She nodded once. Let's not make this personal, she said calmly. We're here to discuss the company. He swallowed. Then gestured toward the seat. She didn't sit immediately. She placed a file on the table first. Opened it. And turned it toward him. You have 2 problems, she said. Financial instability and internal fraud. His face tightened. We suspected as much. No, Elena replied. You didn't. She tapped the page. This isn't recent. It's been happening for years. His hands trembled slightly as he read. Who? He started. But the answer was already there. He just didn't want to say it. Elena didn't rush him. He didn't need to. But his truth doesn't need pressure. He just needs time. Daniel walked in halfway through. Confident. As usual. Until he saw her. Then something changed. Not fear. Not yet. But recognition. He knew. Deep down. He knew this moment would come. Elena, he said, forcing a smile. Didn't expect to see you here. She looked at him. Come. I expected to see you. The room went quiet. Her father looked between them. Confused. Tense. What is going on? He asked. Elena didn't look away from Daniel. You should ask him. Daniel laughed lightly. Ask me what? Elena slid another document across the table. This. Daniel picked it up. His eyes moved across the page. And for a brief second, everything slipped. The confidence. The charm. The control. Gone. That doesn't prove anything, he said quickly. But his voice wasn't steady. Elena didn't react. She placed another file down. And another. And another. Each one more precise than the last. Each one harder to deny. You framed me, she said. Not loudly. Not emotionally. Just clearly. Her father turned slowly toward Daniel. Is this true? Daniel shook his head. This is ridiculous. Elena was logged out of the system during the transaction. Her father interrupted. She wasn't even in the building. Daniel's jaw tightened. They manipulated the logs, he said. Elena finally spoke again. You mean you did? Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Her father's voice broke. Daniel. But there was no defense left. No explanation strong enough. No lie big enough. Because this time, Elena had something she didn't have before. Proof. And proof changes everything. Her father sat down slowly. as if the weight of the truth had finally caught up to him. "I threw you out," he whispered. Elena said nothing. "I didn't listen to you." Still nothing. "I chose the wrong person." That one stayed in the room longer than the rest. Daniel didn't speak again. As for once, there was nothing left to say. And Elena? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't celebrate. She didn't humiliate him the way he had done to her. Because she didn't need to. The truth had already done it. And this time, everyone was watching. After the truth came out, no one spoke. Not immediately. Because some moments don't need noise. They need silence. So reality can settle in. Elena stood there, calm, steady, unchanged. But everything around her had shifted. Her father looked smaller now. Not physically, but in presence, in certainty, in authority. As for the first time, he wasn't the one in control of the situation. She was. Daniel sat frozen. No confidence left. No charm to hide behind. Just a man who had finally run out of lies. And Elena? She didn't rush anything. Because power doesn't need to prove itself. It exists. Her father finally spoke. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Elena looked at him. Not as a daughter. As a decision-maker. "You fix it," she said. His voice trembled slightly. "How?" She stepped closer to the table. Opened another file. "You remove the problem," she said. The words were simple. But the meaning was clear. Her father turned toward Daniel. Slowly. Painfully. "Is there anything you want to say?" he asked. Daniel swallowed. For once. There was no performance. "I made mistakes," he said. Elena didn't react. As that word, mistakes, was too small. Too easy. "You didn't make mistakes," she said calmly. "You made choices." The room went still again. "You didn't just take money," she continued. "You destroyed trust. You risked the company. And you framed someone who never did anything but support you." Daniel lowered his head. Because there was no defense left. Her father closed his eyes for a moment. Then opened them again. Different. Resolved. "You're out," he said. Daniel looked up. "What?" "You're out of the company. Effective immediately." Silence. "No," Daniel said quickly. "You can't just." "I can," his father interrupted. "And I should have done it a long time ago." That was it. No shouting. No dramatic scene. Just a decision that should have been made years earlier. Daniel stood up slowly. Looked at Elena. Then at their father. Then back at her again. But there was nothing left to say. Because the truth had already said everything. He walked out. And this time, no one stopped him. The door closed. And with it, an entire chapter of lies ended. Her father sat down heavily. As if the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. "I lost you," he said quietly. Elena didn't answer immediately. Because that sentence carried more than regret. It carried realization. "Yes," she said. Simple. Honest. He nodded slowly. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "But I want to make things right." Elena looked at him. And for a moment, she saw not the man who threw her out, but the man who finally understood what he had done. "You can't undo what happened," she said. "I know. But you can choose what happens next." He nodded again. "I will." And this time, she believed him. Not completely. But enough. Her mother stepped forward slowly. Tears in her eyes. "Elena. I'm sorry." The words were soft. Fragile. Elena looked at her. And something inside her shifted again. Not pain. Not anger. Something lighter. "I needed you to believe me," she said. Her mother nodded, crying quietly. "I should have." Elena took a slow breath. And then, she let it go. Not the memory. Not the lesson. But the weight. Because she didn't need it anymore. She had already become everything they once doubted. And that was enough. Weeks passed. Then months. Elena didn't move back home. She didn't need to. Her life was somewhere else now. Stronger. Bigger. Her company expanded. New clients. New partnerships. New opportunities. And with every step forward, her name grew. Not because of her past, but because of what she built after it. Her father kept his word. He restructured the company. Cleaned the systems. Rebuilt trust. Slowly. Carefully. And this time, He listened. Really listened. Not just to Elena, but to everyone. Because losing her once had changed him. And he wasn't going to make that mistake again. One evening he invited her to the office. Not as a request. Not as a demand. As an invitation. Elena arrived just before sunset. The building looked the same. But it felt different. Quieter. More grounded. Her father met her at the entrance. And without saying much, he handed her a folder. Elena opened it. And for the first time in a long time, she paused. Inside was a document. Ownership papers. Shares. Majority control. Her name. Brooks Holdings. She looked up. "What is this?" she asked. Her father's voice was steady. "This company was supposed to be a legacy," he said. "I gave it to the wrong person." Elena didn't speak. "I'm giving it to the right one." Silence filled the space between them. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't painful. It was earned. "I don't want it because you feel guilty," Elena said. "It's not guilt," he replied. "It's recognition." She held his gaze. Long enough to know. He meant it. She closed the folder slowly. And nodded. Not out of obligation. But because she had finally reached a place where she could choose. For herself. Not to prove anything. Not to fix the past. But to build something stronger. Something better. Something that would never repeat the same mistakes. Years later, people would talk about Elena Brooks. Not as the girl who was thrown out. Not as the one who was blamed. But as the woman who rebuilt everything. Who turned loss into power. Who turned silence into strategy. Who turned rejection into ownership. And the truth? She didn't need revenge anymore. Because she had something far more powerful. A life they couldn't control. A name they couldn't diminish. A success they couldn't ignore. And every now and then, when someone underestimated her, or mistook her silence for weakness, she didn't argue. She didn't react. She didn't explain. She simply moved forward. Because she knew something they didn't. Silence isn't empty. It's preparation. And the people who walk away from you when you have nothing are the same ones who come back when you have everything. The difference is, by then, you don't need them anymore. And that is the real victory.